Ted, it's good to be with you. A new poll by Salve Regina University's Pell Center gives us a look into how Rhode Islanders feel about several elected officials. Let's start with Governor Dan McKee's job approval rating. Only 34% of voters approve of McKee's performance as governor, while 56% disapprove. Now, these numbers are slightly lower than in the Pell Center's previous poll in June, but Ted, overall, these are not good numbers for McKee.
No, it's not where he wants to be, Michelle. I'd say once you account for the margin of error in a poll, he's basically flat from the last poll dated in June. But that's bad news because he wasn't in good shape in June. He's still not in good shape now in September. And, you know, I know the 2026 election for governor feels far away to people, especially with a big election right around the corner. But what I've learned over many years of covering politics is the year before the election really sets the table for the election year. And that's when, you know, key influential people decide who am I backing, who's strong, who's weak. Fundraising numbers are important. And I think McKee, with numbers like this, is going to struggle to make the case that he can win again, at least, you know, win convincingly, to fellow Democrats and union leaders, people like that, unless we see a sudden turnaround.
And that struggle is why you hear more prominent Democrats talking about potentially running for governor in 2 years.
Right. Helena Foulkes, obviously the former CVS executive, she's been running against him basically since the day the last primary ended, so that's not a surprise. But you see House Speaker Joe Shekarchi very clearly signaling he's waiting in the wings if and when Dan McKee decides this isn't going to work out. Then we saw this week Secretary of State Greg Amore, another Democrat with a lot of good connections, telling Dan McGowan at the Boston Globe he'd be interested if McKee doesn't run. That's just not the kind of thing you would see if these Democrats, they can read a poll, didn't think there was a real chance McKee's not the Democratic, because both of them, I should say they will not run against McKee, which means they're saying they're not sure McKee will be running.
Now, one name that we have heard as a possibility running against McKee is Peter Nerona, the Attorney General. This survey tested his job approval rating for the very first time. 41% of voters approve of the job that Nerona is doing as AG, while 26% disapprove. Nearly 1/3 of voters have no opinion of him. Overall, it sounds like he's in positive territory. But if you're Nerona and you're term limited as AG, what do you do with all of this voter enthusiasm? Where do you go?
That's the question, Michelle, right? As you said, he has talked about running for governor, but I'd say more recently, Attorney General Nerona has been pretty clear he's not going to run for governor. He's close to Helena Foulkes. I think he's likely to support her if current trends continue. He certainly won't support McKee. Those two do not get along very well. Nerona told me a couple weeks ago that he wishes he could run for a third term for Attorney General. That's what he'd love to. He loves his current job. He can't because of term limits. So that's the question he's left with. Some people are talking about, could he run for lieutenant governor? The downside is very little authority and power in that office. The upside is he has the bully pulpit. He is a known figure, so he'd get attention if he wanted to talk about issues like healthcare and climate change, things that matter to him. There is an incumbent Democrat, of course, Sabina Matos, but her numbers were pretty weak in this poll as well, and it's widely expected she will probably get a Democratic primary challenge too. So Nerona at least is going to be floated for that.
It's also eye-opening that nearly 1/3 of voters have no opinion of Nerona, who has been Attorney General for 6 years.
Yeah, and we saw even higher unknowns for some of the other elected officials in this survey, Michelle, which is a good reminder to you, to me, to the people watching a program like this, that many voters don't pay close attention to state affairs, don't have strong opinions, which is why sometimes we can be surprised at election time.
All right, let's look at what the Pell Center found when voters were asked about Rhode Island's congressional delegation. Longtime U.S. Senator Jack Reed leads the list with a 60% job approval rating, the highest of any elected official in the survey. U.S. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is at 49% approval. Congressman Gabe Amo is at 47% approval in the 1st House District, and Congressman Seth Magaziner is at 42% approval in the 2nd District. All of these officials, except Reed, are on the ballot this year. What do you make of these numbers?
Well, first, Reed's durable, strong approval rating is kind of remarkable. He's been the top polling elected official around as long as I've been a reporter here. He's not up for election, as you said, until 2026. The others, they're not up in the stratosphere, relatively speaking, where Reed is. But, you know, being in the 40s is pretty comfortable positioning for a Democrat in a Democratic state like Rhode Island. Certainly the two freshman congressmen have work to do to get better known among voters still. They've only been in office a year or two. But you saw elsewhere in the poll that they are all up by double digits in their efforts to win re-election because they're facing little-known, underfunded Republican challengers in a Democratic state in a presidential year where the Democratic presidential nominee will probably win. So that's why these folks look to be in very good shape, even if they're not up at Jack Reed level approval ratings.
Yeah, so still encouraging numbers for them.
Yeah, I think they're fine with this. They'd always like it to be higher, but they're fine with this.
Thanks so much, Ted. Good to see you.
Great to be here.